About 2 months ago, Vladimir Putin signed a defense agreement with Venezuela. Russia promised to protect Venezuela against any form of aggression. Today, that promise has been exposed as meaningless. The arrest of Nicolás Maduro was not just the collapse of an authoritarian regime in South America. It was a moment that openly exposed the Kremlin's deception. Russia did not show up. Russia did not act. A so-called ally was left to fall alone. For Moscow, this was a public failure. Once again, Russia proved that its defense agreements are tools of propaganda, not real commitments. When a real crisis arrives, Russia is either unable or unwilling to defend its partners. Even more dangerous for Vladimir Putin, Maduro's downfall sent a clear message to the world. Russia is an unreliable ally. If Venezuela could be abandoned this easily, any country depending on Russian protection could face the same fate. This is why the fall of Venezuela is a disaster for Putin, not just because he lost a partner, but because global trust in Russia's promises has been severely damaged.
The world has just witnessed a tectonic shift in the global security architecture, one that will redefine the 21st century. News of Nicolás Maduro's capture through a high-precision U.S. military operation has sent shockwaves across the globe, paralyzing reactions from the streets of Caracas all the way to Vladimir Putin's desk in the Kremlin. Through what President Donald Trump called Operation Absolute Resolve, Washington did not merely execute a regime change, it delivered a diplomatic telegram written in military force. The United States has reclaimed absolute dominance in the Western Hemisphere. At the same time, this operation rang the death knell for Russia's decades-long strategic ambitions in Latin America. From Washington's perspective, Operation Absolute Resolve was not simply an international law enforcement mission. It was a deliberate show of force designed to intimidate global adversaries. Trump, in his characteristic style, declared it the most dangerous, most complex, and yet most successful operation in modern history. Tactically, the operation shattered the myth of Russian-built air defense systems. Venezuela, long fortified with advanced systems such as the S-300 and Sukhoi fighter jets, proved utterly powerless. The strategic narrative is unmistakably clear. Coordinated airstrikes that crippled enemy communications within minutes, followed by elite special forces infiltrating the very heart of Maduro's power structure, represent a level of power projection that only the United States can execute. This success confirms a harsh reality. No other nation, neither Russia nor China, possesses the combination of global logistics, real-time intelligence capabilities, and tactical audacity required to carry out a mission of this complexity inside a territory that is openly hostile on an ideological level. The most intense and emotional reaction came from Moscow. For Vladimir Putin, Maduro's fall was not merely the loss of a political ally, it was a humiliating geopolitical catastrophe. Since the era of Hugo Chavez, Russia had transformed Venezuela into its ideological and military aircraft carrier in Latin America. This relationship was never a simple partnership. It was a central pillar of Russia's strategy to disrupt U.S. security in what Washington considers its own backyard. Caracas functioned as a major arms market, a key customer for Russia's defense industry in South America, a power projection platform, a staging ground where Russia regularly flew nuclear-capable strategic bombers to demonstrate reach toward U.S. territory, a critical energy partner. Through Rosneft, Moscow embedded itself deeply within global oil dynamics. With Maduro captured and power transferred to a U.S.-backed interim government, these strategic investments evaporated overnight. Putin now faces a bitter reality. His last fortress in the Americas has collapsed. Geopolitically, Operation Absolute Resolve has automatically pushed Russia to the margins of global influence in Latin America. The statement that Russia no longer has teeth in the region is not hyperbole. It is an objective assessment based on three core factors. 1. The collapse of Russia's security credibility. For years, authoritarian regimes relied on Russia as a counterweight to U.S. power. Moscow's failure to prevent or even detect the operation that captured Maduro sends a devastating message. Russia cannot protect its allies from direct American action. This is likely to trigger a loyalty exodus among states that have long operated under Moscow's influence. 2. The loss of geopolitical leverage. Russia had long used its presence in Venezuela as a bargaining chip in negotiations over NATO expansion in Eastern Europe. The unspoken message was clear: if you pressure us in Ukraine, we will pressure you in Venezuela. That card has now been seized and destroyed by Donald Trump. Without a foothold in Latin America, Russia has lost its ability to directly threaten U.S. domestic security interests. 3. Total defeat in the energy and economic domain. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves. With Trump asserting that the United States will manage the recovery of Venezuela's oil industry, Washington has effectively delivered checkmate to Russia's energy strategy. Losing influence over Venezuelan oil means the loss of billions in revenue for the Kremlin and the end of Moscow's leverage over global oil pricing through coordination with Caracas. This operation marks the return of the Monroe Doctrine in full force, updated for the 21st century and far more lethal. The United States is no longer relying solely on economic sanctions. It is now openly willing to use direct military power to eliminate foreign influence deemed a national security threat. For Russia, this represents a dramatic retreat on the global stage. Moscow is now isolated in the Americas, stripped of military access, deprived of energy partnerships, and perhaps most painfully, stripped of its prestige as a great power capable of challenging the United States beyond Eurasia. The capture of Maduro through Operation Absolute Resolve stands as a brutal demonstration of American hard power that cannot be disputed. It sends a clear message. Under aggressive leadership, Washington will not hesitate to sever Russia's reach into Latin America. On the global geopolitical chessboard, the Black King in Caracas has been toppled, and Russia can only sit back and watch as its influence in the Western Hemisphere fades into irrelevance under the weight of a superpower. For years, a powerful assumption dominated geopolitical discussions. If Venezuela were ever directly attacked by the United States, Russia, China, and Iran would step in, sending weapons, advisors, or even military support. That assumption has now collapsed. What happened instead is far more revealing and far more damaging for Moscow and its partners. When the United States moved decisively against Venezuela, Russia, China, and Iran did not respond with force. They did not airlift weapons. They did not deploy advisors. They did not establish deterrence. They issued statements. They condemned. And then they fell silent. This silence is not neutrality. It is exposure. The Venezuelan crisis has exposed a brutal truth about the so-called anti-US bloc. Russia, China, and Iran are often portrayed as a united front capable of counterbalancing American power. But when faced with direct U.S. military action, that unity proved fragile, almost performative. Russia, the ally that could not act. Russia's inability to respond meaningfully has sent shockwaves far beyond Caracas. For Moscow, Venezuela was supposed to be proof that Russia could defend its allies even in America's backyard. Instead, Russia watched as its closest partner in the Western Hemisphere was dismantled without a single Russian response beyond diplomatic outrage. This has consequences far greater than Venezuela itself. Allies are watching, clients are recalculating, and the message is unmistakable. If Russia cannot protect Venezuela, it cannot protect you. This is how alliances fracture, not through betrayal, but through demonstrated impotence. Authoritarian alliances are built on one principle above all else: protection. Once that protection is exposed as unreliable, cohesion collapses. Countries that leaned on Moscow for deterrence, whether in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, Africa, or the Middle East, now face an uncomfortable question. If we are attacked, will Russia actually intervene, or will it simply issue statements?